Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into an incredibly powerful true story that breaks down the very anatomy of resilience. And honestly, it completely proves that having a strong purpose almost always outweighs having endless resources. If you've ever felt like the odds were just entirely stacked against you, well, the story of a boy from the quiet town of Green Valley is absolutely going to shift your perspective.
All right, so let's kick things off by anchoring ourselves to this exact life lesson. Success doesn't belong to the strongest. It belongs to the one who refuses to quit. Now, these words aren't just some catchy motivational slogan. They were actually the parting gift given to a 16-year-old boy named Ethan by his late father. It's a heavy legacy to carry for sure, but as we're going to see, it became the absolute rock-solid foundation for everything Ethan would go on to achieve.
It really makes you wonder, right? What actually happens when a town full of doubt meets a rusty old toolbox? Most folks in Green Valley firmly believe that nothing extraordinary could ever happen in their town. So how on earth does a teenager with virtually zero resources manage to prove an entire community wrong? Well, let's find out.
Section 1, the spark of an idea, a competition and a choice.
So picture this. Ethan's school makes an announcement that would change his trajectory forever, a national science competition, and the grand prize is a full university scholarship. But for Ethan, jumping into this meant adding to an already crushing daily routine. We're talking about a kid who literally woke up before dawn to deliver newspapers, went to a full day of school, worked a shift at the local grocery store, and then came home to study under this old flickering desk lamp. He and his mother were facing severe financial hardship. And yet, when that competition was announced, he wanted in. Even when the other students actually laughed at him, mocking him because he couldn't even afford a new pair of shoes, Ethan stayed completely silent and focused. That decision to enter, despite all the mocking, is our first real glimpse of his massive courage.
Faced with all that stinging doubt from his peers, Ethan goes home and opens his father's old toolbox. Inside, he finds his dad's rusty tools, a notebook packed with old ideas, and a simple handwritten note. These weren't just objects. They were the literal and metaphorical tools that would completely change his life. It was that simple handwritten note that sparked everything. It read, "Every great invention begins with someone brave enough to try." Right then and there, reading those words, Ethan made a bold choice. He decided he was going to build a small wind-powered generator, and he was going to do the whole thing using entirely recycled materials.
Moving right along to Section 2, Building Through the Doubt, the Anatomy of Resilience. Now we get to the really gritty part of his journey. Ethan adopts this absolutely exhausting 4-step routine. Every single afternoon after work, he scoured local junkyards looking for broken bicycle parts, old fans, stray wires, and scrap metal. Everyone in town just assumed he was collecting trash. He would piece together his model, watch it completely fail, and then, and this is the crucial part, he would start over.
I mean, the physical failures were just relentless. The blades snapped, the wires literally caught fire, and the battery flat out refused to charge. People constantly told him to just stop wasting his time. Even his closest friend looked at him one day and said, "Hey, maybe they're right." But Ethan pushed through the broken blades and the burnt wires. He'd work until midnight, crash into bed with grease still on his hands, and wake up to start over every single morning.
But then, finally, after nearly 3 brutal months of grinding through failure, he got a breakthrough. The small wind turbine actually began spinning smoothly. Suddenly, a tiny light bulb connected to the machine lit right up. For Ethan, sitting in his room staring at that little bulb, it had to have been the brightest light he had ever seen.
Which brings us to Section 3, the day of the competition, purpose versus resources.
Just picture the scene for a second. Students from expensive schools roll up carrying advanced robots, smart devices, and pristine professional-grade equipment. And standing on the other side, Ethan walks in carrying a homemade wooden box cobbled together from junkyard scraps. And yeah, some people actually laughed at him when he walked through those doors.
But you know who didn't laugh? The judges. And instead of shrinking back or being intimidated by all the shiny, expensive tech around him, Ethan spoke with absolute confidence. And that confidence, it didn't come from having a flawless high-tech project. It came entirely from purpose. He stood there and explained exactly how his affordable, recycled wind generator could provide actual electricity to remote villages where people lived completely off the grid.
Now, the judges certainly didn't go easy on him.
They fired off a series of highly technical, difficult questions, but Ethan answered every single one of them with total honesty. It led everyone in that room to look at this scrap metal invention and seriously wonder, could a homemade wooden box actually be enough? Could a deep sense of purpose truly beat out perfection and endless resources?
Cut to a week later, when the results were finally announced. The announcer calls third place, and it's not Ethan. Second place, still not Ethan. And then comes the final announcement. First place goes to Ethan Carter! For a split second, the entire room was just completely, utterly silent. And then it erupted into massive applause. Even the students who had snickered at his worn-out shoes and his wooden box stood up and clapped the loudest. He had actually done it. He won the gold trophy and that life-changing university scholarship.
Accepting that gold trophy literally with tears in his eyes, he held up his father's old notebook for everyone to see. He looked out at the audience and delivered this incredibly moving speech. He said, "This trophy doesn't belong only to me. It belongs to every person who has ever been told they aren't good enough."
Let's move into Section 4, a lifelong mission, beyond the trophy.
So, from winning that scholarship on day one to becoming a highly successful engineer years later, Ethan stayed entirely true to his path. Today, instead of chasing fame or a massive corporate paycheck, he's dedicated his entire career to his original purpose: designing affordable, clean energy systems for impoverished communities all around the globe. He literally took the blueprint from that homemade wooden box and scaled it up to change the world.
And finally, Section 5, the ultimate moral, the secret to success.
You know, whenever young students ask Ethan for the real secret to his success, he always smiles and shares this exact same lesson. This single, incredibly powerful phrase from his father defined his entire life. It was his anchor during the broken blades, the burnt wires, and the mocking laughter. And by sharing it today, he has inspired thousands of people to just keep moving forward despite their own impossible odds.
Ultimately, this explainer proves a pretty fundamental truth. Success isn't about having an easy life. It is not about having endless resources, expensive equipment, or even the initial support of the people around you. Dreams come true because you keep working, you keep believing, and you push forward, even and especially when everyone else completely doubts you. So I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to take away today. Look at the resources you have right now, no matter how rusty or inadequate they might seem at first glance. When faced with your own challenges, your own burnt wires and broken blades, what will you build with your toolbox? And more importantly, will you be the one who refuses to quit? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I will catch you on the next one.